Hi, everyone. Michelle D'Ambra, self-care coach. How are you today? I wanted to talk today about having realistic expectations on your healing path. We all kind of want a quick fix pill, especially when you're feeling bad. I remember just feeling so desperate many times throughout, my life. I've been slumped over a desk at work, just feeling like, oh my gosh, what is going on? So I understand, feeling like you're not going to ever get any better. And even when we're healing, there's times that like we're starting to feel better, but then we have some bad days, especially during retracing. So then we're like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get better? It's almost like I forgot that I've been doing well. And then, during that retracing process, I'd be like, this is never ending. Am I ever going to get better? And I can tell you today, yes, you will. It's going to take, patience and realistic expectations. So for me, realistic expectations were, I'm going to be 56 next month. There's only so much energy that we have. Besides, what energy I've expelled over the last, 5 decades, but where I am today at my age, plus the damage that I've done, already. So can I work a full-time job, take care of a house, and, I'm a fur mom to three fur babies, take care of them, and then work out more than a couple times, maybe 2, 3 times a week? No. Am I going to be able to do the workouts that I used to do before? No. Do I feel good today? Yes. Do I sleep better today? Yes. So, just being realistic, but it takes time. When I think about my journey, I started making changes in my early 20s. So, a little bit about myself, throughout my childhood and my teens, I had a lot of illnesses: laryngitis, pharyngitis, bronchitis, sinus infections. When I was a baby, I had scarlet fever. So I had a lot of infections. And then in my early 20s, I had a lot of stress going on. And I had irritable bowel syndrome, I had acid reflux, and I had sinus infections. So I saw a doctor in my early 20s, and he's like, you're going to have to be on acid reflux medication the rest of your life. And I'm like, what? Yeah. I'm like 23 years old. I'm not taking a medication the rest of my life. So I changed my diet, at least some changes. I cut out soda and I started drinking water. I'm Italian. I grew up Italian. I'm not full Italian blood, but I was raised very Italian. So I stopped eating as much pasta as I did, and I started eating some vegetables. Um, so that helped a little bit. And I did some research on the acid reflux, and I had to cut out certain things like cooked onions, things that were causing the problem. So then I go into my 30s and I'm taking care of my grandmother who had, you know, onset diabetes, obesity, heart problems, things like that. And she had been a nurse. And at the time, I couldn't see it, but I do now, that she was burned out. So, because I thought to myself, it's really confusing. I don't see her like eating a whole bunch of bad food. I think now, yeah, maybe she ate a little bit too much fruit for the diabetes, but if you're burned out, you're going to be attracted to sugar because it gives you a little boost. So I can see that now, but at the time I was like, I wonder how much of this she could have prevented. So I started learning more about nutrition then. I started eating organic foods. I eliminated sugar, but I was still drinking alcohol, and I would still go out on occasion, and eat whatever. So then I go into my 40s and I got a little bit stricter. I started taking nutrition classes and personal training classes. but I was exercising too much. So by the time I was 45, I was having another adrenal crash. I probably had 4 in my life. And this one, I couldn't bounce back, because I'm in my mid 40s and I have no sex hormones. And the adrenals take over to make sex hormones when a woman is going through menopause. So if you go into that time in your 40s where you're starting to not produce hormones, then the adrenals take over to make the sex hormones. And if your adrenals are trashed, then you're going to have a hard time, because a woman who hasn't been through a lot of stress, and I've talked to women that had no signs of menopause, like they didn't even know they were going through it. So I started asking them questions about their personal life, and they had one marriage, one relationship for many, decades. They had one job for many decades. They didn't move a lot. And if you think about it, like stress, because it gets your adrenals going, that's going to cause problems. And so now I'm looking at, okay, so my diet is good, but what other things in my life, am I not looking at that I'm contributing, whether it's my thoughts, my relationships, burning the candle at both ends. Maybe I wasn't running around like I used to when I was young, but am I working too much? We all have trauma in our past when we were a child, and we learned certain things to deal with that trauma. So for me, I was a workaholic and being overly productive, because that keeps us busy. And for some people, they choose addiction or other things that to self-soothe. And for me, avoidance and working a lot was my thing. So I started to recognize those things, and then over time, you're like, well, what else is not working? So, it's just be patient, because you can't change everything at once. It's going to take some time, but to be realistic, that you're only going to get what you put into it as well. So, there's people that are like, I'm not getting better, but their diet is still a mess. They're still doing cardio type activity. And so they're not being realistic about how they're not making the choices to be healthier themselves. They're expecting the supplements to do the job, and that's not going to do everything. And sometimes they think, the diet and the supplements, yeah, it's going to help to some degree, but then there's other things that you got to look at too. We have negative thinking patterns. We have a certain personality sometimes that, like we get, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about how our personality, could be the issue as well. If we're used to being angry, then we have an angry personality. If we're used to being a complainer, then we have this complainer personality. Well, these things are contributing to us not feeling well. So, as you're going through this process, just be realistic, And the other thing that I also like to share is that not to be super consumed with the good and bad. So I personally don't go down the rabbit hole of, like, I'm aware that we have a lot of things going on in our planet and our world today that's not integrous. There's a lot of darkness going on, and I try not to get obsessed about it. So I know some of you have made some comments about what kind of topics that you'd like to see. And I do have a client who dives more into those kind of, like, being more sensitive to EMFs and what's going on, things like that with possible doomsday. I'm aware of things, but I don't like to get super consumed, because I'm also realistic. I'm like, okay, I've got some guns. I have some food, that it can last like a month. But at the end of the day, if somebody's going to come over here and take over and start bombing and doing this and that, I'm probably going to die anyway. So I'm not I'm not obsessed with it. And that's okay if you want to be prepared and that makes you feel comfortable. But I don't like to live my life in a way that I'm not enjoying it. And so if I'm too consumed with the possibility of something bad happening, then I'm really not enjoying my life. But it's good to talk about those things so that you can explore and come to your own realization. So we are going to talk about those topics. But for me, I just like to share that it's good to be realistic when you're on this path of healing, that it doesn't happen overnight. I've been working on this since my early 20s. I'm going to be 56 next month. And it's taken time to get to where I am now. So I try to remember when I'm talking to people, especially in the beginning, when people come to me and their diet's not great, I have to remember back, 30 years ago when I had digestive problems and a leaky gut and things like that, the struggles that people are having today that maybe they didn't come to that awareness and start making those changes earlier. So it's going to take some time for you to come to your own awareness to be able to let go of things. But you can't blame the supplements and have these expectations that it's all going to heal you in 3 to 6 months and you're going to be great. And you could just go back to all your habits of running and, doing aerobics or whatever it is, not sleeping, drinking alcohol, like all these things are contributing to not feeling well. So you have to take responsibility of your part in contributing to your self healing and or not healing, and that it has very little to do with your coach or your program as much as it is, what part that you need to participate in to be able to feel better. So, I like to share with my clients that, it's one of those things you have to just self-examine and say, hey, what part am I not, doing towards my healing? And even at this point, I had to do the same thing a year ago. I was like, why am I not feeling, as good as I think I should be on a realistic level? And I realized that it was certain relationships, and so I thought, can I change this? If I can't change it, can I live with it? And not live with it feeling angry, but live with it feeling at ease with it. If I can't, do I have the courage to change it and to let go? And, for me at this stage in life, as you get older and realistic to your energy levels, you have to let go of certain things and people and make changes like that in order to feel good. And so that's what I did this past year. And finally, I would say I'm feeling better. I'm sleeping better. It takes a long time for the nervous system to calm down. So, the vagus nerve and the adrenals, when you are so addicted to the hormones of stress from childhood, whether it's the environment, if you grew up in an environment where your parents were fighting or maybe you only had one parent and they were struggling and or there's so many different things, but if you're living on the hormones of stress, we have an environment, we create environments that we're recreating that stress. And sometimes, those hormones of stress are so addictive. When you work out and do cardio is a great example. People work out and go, I feel great. Yeah, well, of course you feel great. You just released all these hormones that make you feel good. The problem is if you keep doing that over time, it's going to burn out and crash. So your body has to take time to heal and to not feel it. I kind of think of like, your body. I don't know, you probably experienced this. Like I'll be laying down, years ago, and your body twitch because we're so addicted to those hormones of stress that even when we start to let go, the body is addicted to it and the nerves are damaged and there's a lot going on. So it's hard to sleep and it's hard to feel relaxed. So it takes time. It takes a lot of time. It takes a commitment and it takes a lot of self-reflection on the things that we need to let go of. So that I wanted to share that because I feel like that's really helped me in the past year is to look at those things. You know, you can clean up your diet and take your supplements and even think you've made changes. But if things are still not working out, it just requires deeper self examination. And we can't control other people. So, you know, it's a little bit harder if you have kids and they're kind of stressful. So it's just going to take you carving out some more time for self-care and learning like what part of this am I in control and what part of it am I not in control? How can I learn to live with this and to feel okay? Because a lot of it's our thought process on how we're perceiving a certain thing. And then sometimes it's not. You know, if you're in a relationship with somebody who's doing absolutely no self work and you're trying to do all this healing with your diet and things like that, and they're not, it's going to be just a conflict, and it's going to be incredibly difficult. And I'm not recommending that people end their relationships, but you have to be realistic that if you choose to be in a relationship with somebody who's not doing these things, that you're not going to heal very quickly. And it's going to take a lot of work on your part to be able to live in that environment that is causing conflict. And if you can and want to change it, then I really believe that the universe will guide you, and that to not be afraid, because I believe that we're meant to have a great life, but we just get in our own way. And sometimes we have to just get out of our own way and make the decision to be brave and courageous and to go into the unknown. But you have to feel really good about that. So I don't know, I'm just kind of rambling now, but I just wanted to share because I know that, people, and I felt that way too, is like we just want things to happen right away. But if they happen right away, we would really miss the lessons in all of this, and we would miss the having the because it takes time to build habits. So if you changed right away, if things became good right away, it's easy to slip back into the bad habits. And that's what happened to me when I was younger. And this happens with younger people. You can bounce back a lot quicker. So once you bounce back quicker, it's very easy to go back into our bad habits because we're like, oh, we're feeling better. I'm feeling great. And then before you know it, we're booking a trip, and we're just burning the candle at both ends and we're working, 10 hours a day because we feel great. Again, we're addicted to those hormones of stress and we want to feel productive. So for the younger people, you're going to have a harder time because you're going to bounce back quicker and you won't be able to implement the changes as well. Whereas the people, I feel like it's a blessing when you get older and you go into the burnout that like lays you out for a few years because you're going to be more inclined to stick to the changes because it's harder to get out, and then you're implementing the things to create these habits of change. So in a way, even though you won't be able to bounce back to how you felt before with higher energy when you were younger, you're going to come out of it a little having a better foundation of change, because it took longer to get out of it, and then you created better habits. So in that way, it's a blessing. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know if you have any questions or any recommendations for the topic.